Buff-banded rails are beautiful but usually shy birds, found in wetlands with low dense cover. In the wild they're hard to see, except in those rare places where they become used to humans. I recorded these intimate scenes of the life of a pair of rails and their chicks in Sydney Park, which is surrounded by St Peter's, Erskineville and Alexandria, densely populated inner Sydney suburbs. This is excellent rail habitat. It might look like a natural wetland, but it isn't. It's a completely artificial habitat island in the midst of a busy city. Sydney Park was created on the site of a former brick pit. The giant holes from which brick-making clay was extracted was subsequently filled with household waste and then capped with clean fill and topsoil. The deep pits became hills, and the low-lying spaces between a chain of wetlands. Between 2014 and 2015, an innovative stormwater recycling scheme, the largest in Sydney, tapped a nearby stormwater channel to top up the wetlands and irrigate the park. Planted out with native wetland species, the park's value as a wildlife refuge was vastly enhanced. Buff-bandeds aren't the only rail species here. There's the even shyer Lewin's rail. They're smaller, have a longer, thinner bill, and lack the white eyebrow and orange chest band of the buff-bandeds. In late August, our pair of buff-bandeds build a secure concealed nest on the ground under the wetland vegetation. The first of 5 eggs is probably laid around the 4th of September, and the last 5 days later, when incubation begins. On 30 September, I get my first sighting of the 5 hatchlings, hiding in the lush growth of wetland herbs. The frantic parents are feeding them with whatever invertebrates they can find, in this case a spider, but mainly with fat earthworms picked up on the boggy ground. Almost immediately, the chicks begin following one or other of the parents. This is a dangerous time because there's little cover in the wetland vegetation bordering the open water, and predators are always on the lookout for unguarded chicks. The main threats are from butcherbirds, kookaburras, pied currawongs, and the ubiquitous purple swamp hens that are always stooging around the wetlands looking for something more interesting to eat than their standard fare of soft shoots of reeds and rushes. If I'd blinked, I would have missed it, so I've slowed this vision right down to show the buff-banded's vigorous defence of its chicks. Alas, within a couple of days, 2 of the chicks have fallen victim, probably to the swamp hen. Fortunately, the rails know of a safer place to move their remaining brood, the frog pond. It's just across the busy pathway from the Gallirallus wetland, and it has good overhead cover, lots of food, and tall, dense rushes to shelter in at night. Even better, the frog pond is protected by a double layer of fencing, a cordon of low hoop fence intended to deter people from trampling on growing vegetation, and waist-high chain link fence that's quite sufficient to deter virtually all intrusion by dogs. The swamp hens don't like crossing it either, but the rails know where they can slip under. A low bridge spans the overflow from the frog pond to the Gallirallus wetland. Sometimes dogs pop under to check it out, but apart from that, it's a secure and convenient passage to and from the frog pond enclosure. And so, around 10 days after hatching, Mr. and Mrs. Rail moved their 3 remaining chicks to the safety of the frog pond, where a glade of paperbark saplings and a thick carpet of leaf litter provides a wonderful creche. In the evening, the rails lead the chicks into the safety of the dense reeds around the pond. After dark, the nocturnal inhabitants arrive in the glade. There's a feral black rat looking for small seeds and fruits, a ring-tailed possum who's come down from the trees to feed on the succulent herbs, and a brush-tail possum who's also on the lookout for herbs and native fruits. Both possum species will eat birds' eggs and even small chicks, but that's mostly a danger for tree-nesting birds. The rails have their chicks safely hidden in the dense reeds. "10 days after the move to the frog pond, and around 20 days after hatching, the chicks are going off on little adventures on their own. But vigilance is essential. When a butcher bird shows up, the rail family make themselves scarce. The chicks are now searching for food themselves and exercising their little wings, which still have no flight feathers at all. A week later, around 28 days after hatching, the chicks have grown astonishingly, and only one is still clinging stubbornly to a parent. It gets plenty of tidbits, and on this occasion, a juicy dragonfly. But the next day there's a curious incident. The parent chases the chick and pecks it on the head. It's getting the message that it's time to leave home. There's time, however, for some fight or flight practice with its still almost featherless wings before it leaves the glade and strikes out on its own. A bit over a month after hatching, the chicks are on their own, and they're even starting to show a hint of the buff chest band that gives the species its name. They're now proficient at finding their own food. This chick has discovered that lots of seed collects among the pebbles in the overflow from the frog pond to the Gulwali wetland, but it's about to get a lesson in looking sharp while you're outside the fenced area. But almost getting accidentally trodden on isn't going to deter this little rail. It's soon back and it scores a fat worm. My last vision of a chick was recorded around 36 days after hatching, near the open water of the wetland. Even then the chicks were only just starting to show flight feathers, but they were adept at moving by secret rail passageways under the dense grasses and sedges. Buff-bandeds are reluctant flyers, but when they do need to fly, they fly strongly and if necessary for long distances. On the evidence of their distribution, they can manage at least 1,000 kilometres in a single flight. They're widespread in mainland Australia, particularly along the east coast. They're found on Norfolk and Lord Howe Islands and are widely distributed in Southeast Asia, New Guinea and New Zealand. And there are Pacific Island populations as far east as Samoa. Remarkably, the species was first entered in the Scientific Catalogue of Nature way back in 1766, when it was described and named by Linnaeus himself, the man who invented the modern system of classification and identification known as binomial nomenclature, from a specimen obtained in the Philippines. If you like this video, please hit the red subscribe button and the bell icon and you'll be notified of new Werrong Lane videos.